Good morning. Our lesson today is the properties of the operations on integers. Today's objectives to state and illustrate the different properties of the operations on integers and to rewrite given expressions according to the given property. But first, let us have this word search. So let us find the hidden words that make up the properties of the operations on integers. So can you find the properties? So those are the properties, and they are closure property, commutative property, associative, distributive property, identity, and the inverse property. Now let us take a look at this illustration. So this explains the closure property. Closure property states that if a and b are two integers, then the sum of a and b will be an integer. The difference of a and b is also an integer, and the product of a and b is also an integer. Let's have this example. So if 14 and 30 are integers, then their sum will also be an integer. If negative 5 and 3 are integers, their difference is an integer. Then if 4 and negative 6 are integers, then the product will be an integer. So why is that the set of integers is not closed under division? An idea? If we divide an integer by another integer, will we get an integer as a quotient? Now let's have this another illustration. The motorist plus the cyclist is equal to the cyclist plus the motorist. That illustration is represented by the commutative property. So this property states that the changing the order of the addends does not affect the sum. Let's see this example. So if we have 6 plus 4, that will be equal to 4 plus 6, because 6 plus 4 is equal to 10, and 4 plus 6 is also equal to 10. And if we have a negative number, negative 6 plus 4 is also equal to 4 plus negative 6, because that would be equal to negative 2. And this is also a negative 2. So negative 2 is equal to a negative 2. This illustration states that a plus b is equal to b plus a. And that is the commutative property. Now let's have this another figure. What have you noticed with this figure? Yes, we have the parenthesis, and the parenthesis change its position, so it means it changed the the groupings. So that is associative property. This property states that changing the grouping of numbers being added does not change its value. Let's have an example. Can you solve this one? Try if they will be, or they will result with the same answer. So it says that 6 plus 2 is equal to 8 plus 1. That will give us 9. And this one, 6 plus 3 is also 9. So 9 is equal to 9. And in the second example, 6 plus negative 2 is 4 plus 3, that is 7. And also 6 plus negative 2 plus 3, that would be 1. And this will also result to 7. So changing the groupings of the number doesn't change its value. It's just the same. And this shows the associative property. It also applies with multiplication. So changing the groupings also in multiplication doesn't change the result or the product. So it means that the sum of A and B plus C is equivalent to A plus the sum of B and C. And here, it goes with multiplication also. So changing the grouping doesn't change the value of the number or the result. So if we multiply 3 and 5, that would give us 15 times 2 is 30. Then 5 times 2 is 10. Multiplied by 3, that would also give us 30. So the product of A and B multiplied by C is equal to A multiplied by the product of B and C. Next, let's have this illustration. So 2 times the oranges plus the strawberries equals 2 times the oranges plus 2 times the number of strawberries. That shows the property or the distributive property. This property states that when two numbers have been added or subtracted and then multiplied by a factor, the result will be the same when each number is multiplied by the factor and the products are then added or subtracted. Now let's have these examples to further explain that property. So let's solve. If we are to multiply negative 2 to the sum of 4 and 3, that would be equal to negative 2 times 4 plus negative 2 times 3. So let us simplify. 4 times 3 is 7 times negative 2. That will give us negative 14. Next, the opposite or the other side of the equation. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8 plus negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. So the sum of these two negatives will give us negative 14 and they are the same. Now if we are to multiply 2 to the difference of 4 and 3, that will give us 1. So 2 times 1 is equal to 2. Or multiply 2 and 4 here minus 2 times 3. So that will be like this. So what is 2 times 4? That is 8. And 2 times 3, that is 6. So 8 minus 6, that would give us 2. So 2 is equal to 2. The value is just the same. So distributive property explains that the sum of B and C multiplied by A is equal to A or the product of A and B plus the product of A and C. Now let's have this next property. So if we are to add these two apples with no apples, that would give us these same apples. And this is the identity property of addition. So identity property of addition states that the sum of any number and 0 is the number itself. Example, 5 plus 0 is 5. 0 plus negative 4 is negative 4. So identity property is A plus 0 is equal to A. Now let's have the identity property for multiplication. Identity property for multiplication states that the product of any number and 1 is the number itself. So let's have this example. 8 times 1 equals 8. 1 times negative 9 is negative 9. So we can say that 1 here is the multiplicative identity. And here, 0 is the additive identity. Now let's have this other property. So if we put in 14 and if we add and remove that 14, that represents the inverse property of addition. So it states that the sum of any number and its additive inverse is 0. So let's have this example. If we have the number 10, its additive inverse, it means the opposite sign. So if this is positive 10, its additive inverse is negative 10. If we add these two, we will get 0. Just the same here, if we have negative 6 and its additive inverse is positive 6, if we add these two, we will get 0. So inverse property for multiplication states that the product of any number and its multiplicative inverse or reciprocal is 1. Now let's take these examples. So 4, if we have a number 4, and we get its reciprocal is 1/4, and if we multiply them together we will get a 1. Same thing with negative 8, the multiplicative inverse or reciprocal of negative 8 is negative 1/8, and if we multiply them together we will get the product of 1. So again, these are the properties of the operations on integers. And now let us have this activity. State the property of the given expressions. Now think of this. If your mother gave you 4 5-peso coins and your grandmother gave you 4 20-peso bills, you now have 20 peso worth of 5-peso coins and 80 peso worth of 20-peso bills. You also have 4 sets of 25 each, consisting of a 5-peso coin and a 20-peso bill. So how do you write that? Using the properties. Now please rewrite this expression using the given property.